In the peaceful and vibrant village of Ikena, nestled between rolling green hills and lush farmlands, there lived a young woman named Adesua. She was the pride of the village, tall, elegant, and blessed with a beauty that made both men and women stop to admire her. But beyond her beauty, Adesua was known for her kindness, humility, and strength of character. Many suitors, both rich and influential, came to seek her hand in marriage. Some were warriors, others were traders who traveled to distant lands, and some were noblemen from neighboring villages. But to everyone's surprise, Adesua gave her heart to Ikane, a simple farmer. Ikane was not the most handsome man in Ikena. A deep scar ran down the side of his face, a reminder of a past battle that few knew about. His hands were rough from years of toiling under the sun, and his clothes were always stained with the soil he worked. The villagers often whispered, wondering why a woman as beautiful as Adesua would choose someone like Ikane over the wealthy men who pursued her. But Adsua's love for Ikane was not based on wealth or appearance. Years ago, when she was barely 18, she had been returning from the river when 3 men, bitter from her rejection, cornered her in the forest. Their intentions were dark and cruel. She had screamed for help, but in that moment, it seemed like no one would come. Then, like a warrior from the gods, Ikane appeared. Armed with nothing but a machete and his bare hands, he fought them off with all his strength. One of the attackers slashed him with a dagger, leaving a deep wound on his face, but he did not back down until Adesua was safe. From that day, she saw him as more than just a farmer. He was her protector, her hero, and the man she would love forever. But the world did not see what she saw. Her mother, Mama Adesua, constantly scolded her. "Adesua, why do you waste your beauty on a poor man? Look at you! You should be married to a chief, a merchant, or even a prince." Her father, Oba Ikena, was more understanding but still concerned. "Daughter, love is good, but love does not put food on the table. Ikane is hardworking, yes, but can he truly provide for you?" Even her best friend, Ngozi, did not understand her choice. "Adesua, I know he is kind, but kindness will not buy you fine clothes or take you to the city. Look at me, I will marry a rich man and travel to Lagos. You should think about your future." But Adesua remained firm. "I do not want a man because of his riches. I want a man who will stand by me, protect me, and love me for who I am." And so, despite the whispers, the doubts, and the pressure, Adesua and Ikane remained together, building their love on trust and respect. 1 year later, during the festive season of New Yam Festival, when villagers from far and wide returned home to celebrate, a new figure arrived in Ikena. His name was Obinna, and he was unlike anyone the villagers had seen before. Obinna was tall, dark-skinned, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had seen the world. He wore fine clothes, golden jewelry that sparkled under the sun, and expensive shoes that no one in the village had ever worn. But what truly caught everyone's attention was the carriage that brought him into the village, a grand black automobile that rumbled like thunder. He came from America. The villagers whispered excitedly. Obinna had spent the last 10 years abroad, and he had returned with riches that dazzled the people. He rented a grand house, threw lavish feasts, and charmed everyone with his stories of life in America. Women flocked around him, hoping to catch his eye, and men envied him. But it was Adesua that caught Obinna's eye. The moment he saw her walking through the village square, he became obsessed. She was unlike the other women who threw themselves at him. She had grace, beauty, and dignity, and that made him want her even more. "I will marry her," Obinna told his friend, Chijioke. "No woman has ever rejected me before. She will be mine." Obinna wasted no time. He began his pursuit, sending gifts to Adesua's family, bags of rice, expensive clothes, jewelry, and even money. Her mother was delighted, her father was impressed, and even Ngozi began whispering, "Adesua, maybe this is your chance to live like a queen." But Adesua remained unmoved. She ignored Obinna's advances, refusing to be dazzled by his wealth. This angered him. No woman had ever turned him down before. "If she will not come willingly, I will make sure she has no choice." He approached Adesua's parents directly, promising to take their daughter to America and give her a life of comfort and prestige. Her mother was overjoyed. "You will be Anna Brodian," she cried. "Do you know what that means? You will live in America, dress like a queen, and have everything you ever wanted." Even her father, who had once hesitated, now saw the opportunity. "Obinna is a great man, my daughter. He is rich, he is powerful, and he can take care of you. Do not be foolish." They gave Ikain an ultimatum. "If you want to marry our daughter, you must bring the bride price in 1 week, or we will give her to Obinna." Ikain was devastated. He had saved money, but it was nowhere near enough to meet the demands of Adesua's parents. Selling his land would mean losing everything he had worked for. Desperate, he went to plead with them, reminding them of how he had once risked his life to protect Adesua. But they only laughed. "Do you think marriage is built on old favors?" Her father scoffed. "If you saved her, then tell us how much your bravery is worth. We will pay you and send her to a real man." Heartbroken, Ikain left. And as he did, he saw Obinna arriving in a chariot, carrying even more gifts. Adesua watched in pain as her parents welcomed Obinna into their home, treating him as their son-in-law before she had even agreed. Her heart told her to run to Ikain. But her mind whispered, "Maybe your parents are right. Maybe this is your chance for a better life." Little did she know, Obinna had a secret one that would turn her dreams into a nightmare. As the days passed, the pressure on Adesua mounted. Her mother constantly reminded her of the life she could have in America, while her father warned her not to embarrass the family by refusing such a golden opportunity. Even Gozi, her closest friend, urged her to reconsider. "Adesua, think about your future. Ikain is a good man, but love will not put food on your table. This is your chance to escape this village and live like a queen." Adesua's heart ached. She loved Ikain, but everyone around her spoke of wealth, comfort, and opportunity. She knew Ikain was struggling to raise the bride price, and time was running out. Meanwhile, Obinna continued his relentless pursuit, showering her with gifts, sweet words, and promises of a life she had never imagined. One evening, after yet another argument with her parents, Adesua wandered to the riverbank, lost in thought. She sat beneath a large baobab tree, gazing at the water, torn between love and duty. That was when Obinna arrived. Dressed in fine clothes, wearing a confident smile, he sat beside her and sighed. "Adesua, I know this is hard for you, but I swear, I only want what's best for you." She remained silent. "Look at your life here," he continued. "You wake up before the sun, you fetch water, you cook, you struggle. But with me, all of that will change. In America, you will never worry about hunger. You will wear the finest clothes, and you will be respected by everyone. Isn't that what you deserve?" Adesua turned to him, her heart heavy. "I do not want to marry for riches, Obinna. I want to marry for love." Obinna laughed softly. "And who says you will not find love with me? Love can grow, Adesua. Give me a chance to show you." For the first time, doubt crept into her heart. Could she learn to love Obinna? Was she foolish to hold on to Ikain when the entire world seemed to be telling her otherwise? That night, Ikain sat outside his small hut, deep in thought. He had spent the day trying to gather the bride price, but it was not enough. He felt helpless. That was when Gozi came to visit. "Ikain, you need to let Adesua go," she said bluntly. He looked up at her, shocked. "What are you saying?" "She is being offered a life of wealth and comfort. Do you really think you can compete with that? Love is not enough, Ikain. Adesua loves me. That is enough." Gozi sighed and shook her head. "Then why do you think she has been spending time with Obinna?" Ikain's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "She was with him today, by the river," and Gozi said. "They talked for a long time. She did not reject him, Ikain." She listened. Pain stabbed through his chest. Could it be true? Was Adesua considering leaving him? Gozi placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe it's time to move on, Ikain. You deserve someone who truly chooses you, not someone who has to be convinced." That night, Ikain did not sleep. The words haunted him. The thought of losing Adesua was unbearable. But worse than that was the possibility that she was already slipping away. The next day, Adesua's father summoned her. "Ikane has failed to bring the bride price," he announced. "Your wedding to Obena will take place in 3 days." Adesua's hands trembled. "Baba, please give Ikane more time." "No," her father thundered. "The decision is final. Obena is a good man, and you will marry him. This discussion is over." Tears filled Adesua's eyes. She ran out of the house, her heart pounding. She needed to find Ikane, but when she reached his hut, he was not there. She searched the fields, the market, and the riverbank, but he was nowhere to be found. Panic gripped her chest. Finally, she found Mama Ikane, his mother, sitting outside their home with a sorrowful expression. "Mama, where is Ikane?" she asked, breathless. The old woman looked up at her, sadness in her eyes. "My son has left the village, Adesua. He said there is nothing left for him here." Adesua staggered backward, her world crashing around her. "No, he wouldn't leave me," she whispered. But it was too late. Ikane was gone. 3 days later, dressed in the most beautiful attire she had ever worn, Adesua sat before the village crowd as Obena's wife. The wedding was grand music, feasting, dancing. Her parents beamed with pride, and the villagers whispered about how lucky she was. But inside, she felt empty. That night, after the celebrations, Adesua sat in the grand home that Obena had rented for them. He poured wine into a glass and handed it to her, smiling. "To our future," he said. She forced a smile, taking a small sip. "Now that you are my wife," Obena said, his voice smooth, "we must prepare to travel soon." Adesua nodded. That was the only thing she held on to, the idea that at least she would see America. But then Obena's face changed. His smile faded, replaced by something colder. "Before we leave, I need you to do something for me," he said, leaning closer. "You must carry a small package in your bag. You must not open it, and you must not ask questions." A chill ran down Adesua's spine. "What is in the package?" she asked slowly. Obena smirked. "Do not concern yourself with that, my dear. Just do as I say." Realization dawned on her. Something was wrong. "Obena, what are you making me do?" But he did not answer. He simply smiled a smile that no longer seemed charming, but dangerous. And in that moment, Adesua knew she had made a terrible mistake. Adesua's hands trembled as she held the glass of wine. She had always felt uneasy around Obena, but now the fear was real. His charming words and lavish gifts had masked something sinister, something she could not ignore any longer. "What if I refuse?" she asked cautiously, setting the glass down. Obena's expression darkened. He placed his cup on the table, leaned in closer, and gripped her wrist tightly. "Listen, my dear wife," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "I have spent too much money on this wedding. I have bought you fine clothes. I have pleased your family, and I have done everything to make you comfortable. The least you can do is this small favor for me." Adesua tried to pull her hand away, but his grip tightened. "Obena, I am your wife, not your servant." She snapped, trying to mask the panic rising in her chest. Obena released her suddenly and laughed. He sat back in his chair, shaking his head. "You think you have a choice," he scoffed. "You are coming with me to America, and you will do exactly as I say." Or he trailed off, his eyes cold and calculating. "Or what?" Adesua asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or you will never leave this village. And trust me, I can make sure your life here becomes a nightmare." That night, Adesua lay on the luxurious bed, staring at the ceiling. She felt like a prisoner. Obena had given her no real choice. He wanted her to smuggle something illegal, and she was certain it wasn't just a harmless package. The weight of her mistake crushed her. She had chosen wealth over love, and now she was trapped. But she refused to let fear control her. She needed a way out. Her mind raced. Who could help her? Her parents? No, they had sold her off like cattle. Ngozi? No. She had encouraged this disaster. Obena's friend, Chijoke. Definitely not. Then it hit her Ikin. But he was gone. Or was he? She had to try. At the first light of dawn, while Obina was still asleep, Adesua slipped out of the house. She wrapped herself in a shawl and hurried towards the one place she had not checked before, the old farmland outside the village. Her heart pounded as she approached the abandoned fields. The morning mist curled around the trees, and the silence was eerie. "Please let him be here," she whispered. She searched for nearly an hour, exhaustion creeping in. Just as hopelessness threatened to break her, she heard the distant sound of a machete striking wood. She followed the sound, her breath catching in her throat as she stepped into a clearing. And there he was. Iken. His back was turned to her, his strong arms swinging the machete as he cleared a section of land. His clothes were worn, his face covered in sweat, but he was there. "Iken," she called out. He froze. Slowly, he turned, his eyes widening in shock. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then his expression hardened. "Why are you here, Adesua?" he asked, his voice filled with pain. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I made a mistake, Iken. A terrible mistake. I need your help." He looked away. "You chose him, Adesua. You married him." I was pressured. I was deceived. And now he wants to use me for something illegal. I don't know what it is, but I know I have to get away before it's too late. Iken's jaw clenched. He had loved her. And yet, she had abandoned him for a wealthy stranger. But as much as it hurt him, he could see the fear in her eyes. She was in real danger. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. Adesua fell to her knees. "Help me escape." Back at the house, Obina woke up to find the bed empty. At first, he thought Adesua had simply gone to fetch water. But when he checked the kitchen, the compound, and even asked the servants, she was nowhere to be found. His face darkened with fury. "She would not dare," he growled. Without wasting time, he stormed into the village, gathering his men. "Find her! Now!" The villagers whispered as they saw Obina and his men searching every corner of Ikena. "The new bride is missing?" they murmured. Ngozi, hearing the commotion, felt a sick feeling in her stomach. Had Adesua realized the truth about Obina? She had to find her before Obina did. Back at the old farmland, Iken wasted no time. "There's an old trader's route that leads to the next village. From there, you can board a boat to the city," he said, his voice steady. "But you must leave now." Adesua nodded, wiping her tears. "What about you?" Iken sighed. "I will stay behind to make sure no one follows you." Before she could respond, shouts echoed in the distance. Obina's men were closing in. "They're coming!" she gasped. Iken grabbed her wrist. "Run!" They raced through the trees, branches scratching at their skin. Adesua's heart pounded as she heard footsteps getting closer. They had to be fast. As they neared the edge of the forest, a group of Obina's men appeared in front of them. "There she is!" One of them shouted. Iken didn't hesitate. He launched himself at them, fighting with all his strength. Fists flew, men shouted, but Iken fought like a lion. "Go, Adesua!" he roared. Tears streamed down her face, but she ran, pushing forward with everything she had. She burst out of the forest onto the trader's road, gasping for breath. Ahead, a horse-drawn cart was leaving for the city. Without hesitation, she jumped onto it, the driver barely having time to react. As the cart pulled away, Adesua looked back one last time. Iken was still fighting, still protecting her. Then, he disappeared from view. Adesua arrived in the city days later, exhausted, broken but free. She found work at a small shop, earning just enough to survive. Weeks passed, and she never heard from Iken again. Was he alive? Had Obina killed him? She did not know. But then, one day, a letter arrived. She opened it with trembling hands. "Crude oil has been discovered on my land. I am leaving for Lagos, then Ghana. Maybe one day, our paths will cross again. Until then, be safe, Adesua." Tears fell onto the paper as she whispered his name. Iken had found fortune, and she had found freedom. But they had lost each other,